All right, hey folks, so it's Faz here from Faz Lifts, and today we're talking about cupping therapy. So you might remember Michael Phelps a few years ago and the media explosion surrounding cupping therapy. So I want to talk about the past 5 years as we've seen it thrust into the limelight, and also some of the more modern research and where we're at and what do we know about cupping therapy, whether it works and whether it could be useful for us or not. So firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. And if you'd like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals, there's a link in the description. So yeah, let's start with a bit of a discussion surrounding new things like this. Okay, now, I happen to think that most new things have a life cycle where they go through 3 stages and they spend the majority of their time in the final stage. So every new like shiny thing that we've had in the industry or whatever else goes through these 3 phases. The first one is mania. Now, as soon as everyone saw Michael Phelps with those big, very visible sort of marks on his body, there's this massive media frenzy about what is he doing? What is it? Is it worth it? Can we do it? Is it going to help? And it turned into almost it transcended the sport, and it became more of a fashion accessory. So there was a mania around it. And with that mania became a lot of people looking to sell the technique for a lot of purported benefits. And usually in this stage, the benefits are like crazy high. And then after that, you get a degree of cynicism, and then you have a rational acceptance, which is, I think, is kind of where we're at now. But in terms of the mania, this is a quote from a 2015 wellness website where they're really trying to sell this. This was a quote from 6 years ago. The healing aspect of cupping therapy / treatment is through the release of toxins in your body. The suction from the cups can penetrate deep into your tissues, causing the tissues to release harmful toxins. It triggers the lymphatic system, clears the blood vessels, and stretches and activates the skin. That is sounds great, you know, but it's a combination of stuff which is impossible, ranging to stuff which doesn't make any sense. Like triggering the lymphatic system doesn't make any sense. I mean, if your lymphatic system stopped working for any point of time, then that would be a bad day. You would probably be dead. And clearing the blood vessels, I don't think it's that simple to clear blood vessels. Presumably it means from plaque, arteries, whatever, but yeah, that's not going to happen from a session of cupping. And stretching and activating the skin, well, stretching, sure, activating, I'm not sure why. Now, the reason that I'm putting this quote in is just to show you a bit of an example about the mania stage. You have any number of people coming in and trying to sell you cupping and as putting in all these benefits, which sound great to the uninitiated, but which set you up for a lot of high hopes and maybe set you up for a bit of a fall. And so more recently, we had Dwayne Johnson show a picture. This was back in March on his Instagram of him doing cupping. And what I want to look at today is some of the research behind what actually could be happening. But firstly, let's look at some of the purported benefits. So some of these are still being sold as a means for getting, as a reason for getting cupping. But this is a lot of the stuff which we're kind of discovering and investigating right now. So some of the purported benefits, some of these are supported by the research, some aren't. Pain relief, recovery from training sessions, arthritis, headaches, migraines, maldigestion, lack of appetite, and headaches. In terms of what we do actually see, this is kind of where we're at. This is the current research. So I looked at research studies from just the past year or so. And the first one that I want to share with you is called Cupping for Patients with Chronic Pain. And this is a systematic review and meta-analysis. So adverse events were more frequent among patients treated with cupping compared to no treatment. What they mean by adverse events in this case is there are things that can go wrong when you do cupping. So because of the nature of the treatment, infection is a risk, and you really have to wear PPE, protective clothing, to make sure you're handling things right. You can also sort of pierce the skin, and there are various things that can go wrong with the actual cupping treatment. So adverse events were more frequent in patients that were treated relative to no treatment. So I mean, that's not a great start. I'm trying to be, sort of neutral with this, but that's not a great start. Differences compared to sham cupping or other active treatments were not statistically significant. Cupping might be a treatment option for chronic pain, but the evidence is still limited by the clinical heterogeneity and risk of bias. Essentially, what that's saying is there might be a high degree of bias amongst practitioners, people trying to sell you cupping, and also Alongside that, you have a degree of bias from the people trying to sell you cupping, but you also have a degree of placebo from the people receiving the cupping. So there was this, most of the complaints surrounding Michael Phelps from 2015 was it was really just a sham thing, and high-level athletes aren't sort of invulnerable to shams and fads. So that meta-analysis on pain does not indicate there's actually a great deal of benefit, and that was one of the biggest ones from the last year or so. And it's a meta-analysis which is useful. So the next one is called Cupping Therapy, an overview from a modern medicine perspective. There is growing evidence of its potential benefits in the treatment of some diseases, especially pain-related conditions. We will discuss that in the next slide because I have another study which follows up on that. Following infection control measures is a very important component of the cupping therapy practice. What that's saying is that, like I was saying with the first study, it's important to practice good hygiene when you're doing these things, because otherwise the risk of doing the cupping procedure may well outweigh the benefits you may receive. And if you look at the first sentence here, it's a very cautious sentence. Growing evidence, potential benefits. At least according to these two studies, we're not currently there yet to consider cupping to be any kind of a viable treatment. And just to end with a couple. Efficacy of cupping therapy in patients with fibromyalgia syndrome, a randomized placebo-controlled trial. Despite cupping therapy being more effective than usual care to improve pain intensity and quality of life, effects of cupping therapy were small and comparable to those of a sham treatment, so basically a placebo. And as such, cupping cannot be recommended for fibromyalgia at the current time. Essentially, what this study is saying is it can be effective, but if it is, it's more than likely just placebo, because it's not really that much better than a sham treatment. So as a result, it can't really be recommended. And finally, key elements that determine the efficacy of cupping therapy, a bibliometric analysis and review of clinical studies. We identified negative pressure as the key element behind cupping therapy. Cupping therapy may cause redistribution of oxygen at the cupping site and enabling tissues, thereby inducing a therapeutic effect by increasing regional blood flow. It may also induce metabolic change, immunomodulation, and neuromodulation. That one's not particularly well supported, and they seem to be guessing at why it works rather than trying to determine whether it works or whether it's just placebo. So overall, we're not seeing a great deal. Now, you might wonder then, well, what is the overall stance on this? What is my stance on this? Well, let's talk about two things. First of all, what is my stance? And secondly, why are people so drawn to this? So firstly, my stance. I don't feel that cupping therapy right now has got enough evidence to make it something which is worthwhile doing. I don't feel that we're there yet, despite some high-level athletes and action heroes like The Rock regularly doing cupping and talking, perhaps at least demonstrating that they're doing it, maybe not endorsing it, but just saying, hey, I did this, I tried it. And in the bodybuilding scene, we also see quite a lot of top bodybuilders attempt to do stuff like that as well, like Nick Walker. He's quite fond of his cupping therapy, and a few others. I don't personally feel there's enough evidence to back it up. I think it's more right now still in the stage where we haven't quite reached rational acceptance, because we don't really know what it's good for. I think we're somewhere between the mania or acceptance or the cynicism stage, depending on where you sit. Me personally, I'm more of a cynic on cupping. Now, the other thing is, why are people drawn to stuff like this? I think firstly, people are drawn because their favorite athletes are doing it. That's fairly common, So Michael Phelps, he was the darling of everyone in the UK for his time in the Olympics. And as a result, if he's doing something which hardly anyone else is doing, people want to know what it is so they can get that edge. I think it also points to the mentality that I'm going to do what The Rock is doing, and then I'm going to get a glimpse of the type of results that The Rock gets. It's the same attitude which says, okay, I'm starting the gym on Monday. I need creatine. How much protein do I need? It's that same thing. It's like, I'm going to start at the gym. I need to get a protein shake. Or I'm going to start at the gym. I need to get my steroids, in this day and age. It's the kind of mentality where it's like, I've got a problem. I'm going to start on something. I'm going to throw some money at it, and that's going to fix it. Even though none of those people are training as hard as The Rock. None of those people have put in decades of work like The Rock. None of those people wake up in the morning and do a cardio session before the day starts like The Rock. Yet, if they do cupping, they can throw, 50 pounds to 100 pounds at it, and they can get some of what The Rock is. That's that kind of attitude. It's the, I'll search for the solution in a pill type of attitude. It's the I'll throw money at it type of attitude. That's kind of what it is and where we're at. So that's kind of why I think people are drawn to it, because you could argue, well, no, they're drawn to it because their favorite athlete does it. Well, okay, but are they doing all the rest of what their favorite athlete is doing? Are they doing the basics? Are they hitting the weights as hard? Are they adhering to their diet as much? Are they doing all those more firmed up blocks or more firmed up things that their favorite athlete or favorite star is doing? Well, no, there are gaps there, yet they do want to go out and spend money on this. So I think part of it's that. I also think part of it's just kind of fun. They want to try it out, see it for themselves. I don't think it's necessarily something that a serious athlete would do as their primary, like, first point of call for, okay, I want to get on the right path. I think it's something that your weekend warrior does to kind of feel better about not doing the rest of it, like not quite having breakfast, skipping breakfast, having an extra donut when they don't need to, missing an extra set of squats, not doing the hard stuff in the gym. But yes, let's throw some money at this and let's get a glimpse of greatness. I guess that's my honest appraisal of what I think of cupping. Right now, I think the verdict is very much out there. I don't think we have a concrete yes or no either way. So I'm not saying it's useless, but right now I don't personally feel that there's enough evidence to warrant the use of cupping. And also, I would say there are potential dangers there. And particularly right now, when we're in that fairly new stage, when there are new practitioners of cupping who have just decided to give it a go, you may well be exposing yourself to some risk of harm, infection, whatever else, by allowing yourself, by paying for cupping. So that's my analysis on that and my position on cupping. All right, take care.